Hi, everyone. Welcome to another Sports Talk Tech live show. I'm your host, Dwayne. Thanks for joining me. And today it's all about cricket, lovely cricket. And we will be discussing the just concluded first test between South Africa and the West Indies at the Centurion Ground. If this is your first time on the channel, welcome. Let me know where you're joining me from. And for those of you who are regulars, I thank you so much for being here with me. And I'm looking forward to having a fruitful and a lovely discussion with you. But before we get into it, I just got one favor. Do me a favor and hit that like button. It helps with the algorithm, it helps so other people will know. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, I also recommend that you hit that subscribe button. But not only hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. As I like to say, the notification bell is the best bell on YouTube. All right, so the match ended in just under 3 days. In many ways, it seemed like a competitive match on the surface, but South Africa, in the end, were comfortable winners, an 87-run victory. And what I want to do today is to go over my 5 main takeaways. Of course, you could take away a lot from a game like this, but I want to go over my 5 main takeaways, get your thoughts on it, answer your questions, get your comments on the screen. It's a show about you as well. So I want to start with my 5 main takeaways. And the way I look at this, and the first one that comes to mind is that I believe West Indies found themselves in a major hole in the opening session of day one. That's probably where they lost the test match. You know, it's very early to lose a test match in the first 2 sessions of any game, but that's where I think they lost the test match. The bowling was all over the place. There were leaking runs. It's almost like a faulty pipe. And all of this largely due to application, poor line and length, giving away a lot of balls, easy balls to hit, and, you know, all over the place. And in many respects, the West Indian bowlers had a hard time figuring out how to bowl on the pitch. And of course, we have to recognize that these are unfamiliar conditions. And not only that they're unfamiliar conditions, these days you don't get a lot of time to acclimatize. So it's not like they're there months in advance, weeks in advance, in terms of preparation. Yes, West Indies were in Africa, in Zimbabwe, but not in South Africa. Conditions much different. And so I have to acknowledge that. However, when you have a bowling attack with the likes of Kemar Roach, Alzarri Joseph, and the returning Shannon Gabriel, you would expect them to figure things out much quickly on the first day. So unfortunately, this didn't happen for the West Indies, and they dug themselves in a deeper hole, and the likes of Dean Elgar and Aiden Markram capitalized on the poor bowling and, you know, amassing a total, you know, scores, individual scores of 71 and 115 respectively. Plus, it doesn't help that you drop Elgar on 10, so he punished you. And so that's the first main takeaway for me, you know, putting yourself at a disadvantage early. First of all, again, I would like to welcome everyone on the channel. Thank you for joining me tonight on Sports Talk Tech. I'm Dwayne, and I'm here for you. Hit that like and subscribe button if you want to know when our content comes on live, when we drop new videos. And don't forget to post your comments in the chat, questions in the chat. I'll handle them if I can. And I definitely feature them on the channel as well. So I really appreciate you joining me tonight on a Friday where we're talking a lot of cricket. So yeah, so number one for me is a self-inflicted inefficient bowling at the start of the test match. Day one, day two. My second takeaway, however, is this was a pacer-friendly pitch, particularly late on. So as you can see, and if you looked at the scorecard and you realize that wickets fell mainly in the final session. So day 2 and 3, you saw 16 wickets in a row going, right? So there was some help to the bowlers late on. So despite, I think, the poor conditions in terms of the poor bowling rather from the West Indies early on in the first 2 sessions, where South Africa didn't lose any wickets, they made a 100-run partnership. That some partnership was broken after lunch. The majority of the wickets they picked up was in the final session, so after tea. And so at the end of the day, South Africa finished on 314 for 8, with most of those wickets falling in the final session. And it was at that point you said to yourself in late on day 1 that, whoa, West Indies finally figured out the pitch. But obviously, as we know, hindsight now, we've seen what happened over day 2 and 3. You recognize that there is a lot of movement, a lot of help, in particular, to the bowlers. And if you find the right line and length, you would have been successful on a centurion pitch. And that's what happened. So West Indies looked really well at especially Joseph's in particular, Alzarri Joseph in particular, late on in day 1. And so by the time, they got West Indies, by the time West Indies got South Africa out, their response was, 212 in response. And the challenge here was only Raymond Reefer really put up any form of a defense. He got some assistance from Jermaine Blackwood in the first innings of the West Indies response, but they didn't apply themselves. They didn't capitalize, and South Africa found a way to get a lot of wickets. And again, what played out in day 1 happened in day 2 for the South Africans in their response, in their first attempt at bowling to the West Indies. And so clearly there's something going on in the wicket, particularly late on. So all the great bowling in this test match, you have to say, occurred largely post-lunch, after tea. And the thing about that, though, is that you would expect them to think about this and recognize that wickets will tumble at that point, and as batsmen, they would have to apply themselves somewhat differently. It's that kind of pitch that you never felt like you get in, no matter how well you felt comfortable at the innings. You, at any moment in time, you could get up. You were never on top of it as a batsman. And I think the West Indies batters in particular had some problems with that. Obviously, South Africa had that as well, but that was what's going on. Now, so all of that stuff in terms of good bowling, the pitch offering something for the bowlers, the seam bowlers in particular, leads me to my third takeaway, and I've maybe touched on some of it already, but the same batting challenges for the West Indies exist. They have the same problems that we always see and we talk about. And here, they need to find a way to be much more competitive at this level, right? And that's easier said than done. We can talk about how much cricket is being played in the region. We can talk about pitches. And yes, I'm going to talk about the pitches, because in particular, the lack of pace bowling friendly pitches in the West Indies, in many ways, is the main contributing factor for why, when you get on a pitch that is friendly to bowlers who can find the right line and length, then you struggle. And that's what's happening for the West Indies. So, and obviously that also impacts the kind of bowlers that we can eventually put forward at the international level, but we're sticking to batting here. And the same thing happened, right? They cannot find a way to be competitive at this level. But another note, so we have to figure out a way to prepare pitches that can make the batters competent against hostile bowling. And South African bowling is hostile. We saw top quality bowling from the Australians as well. So anytime you come up against a team that can, shake you up somewhat, we always are found wanting here. And that is something that they significantly need to work on, right? And I think pitch upgrades can occur much quicker than some of the other structural problems that West Indies cricket has. And again, thank you everybody for joining us. I'm here talking about the just concluded test match between South Africa and the West Indies, and what seemingly looked like a competitive match in the end was comfortable for the South Africans. West Indies bowled well in the second innings, in South Africa's second innings, but the deficit was just not good enough. It was too far away for them to chase, given the quality of batsmen they have. And so it's important there. And the next thing that I have to think about is, how can you get batsmen to support each other? And so you look at the two innings for the West Indies. In the first innings, you get a resilient Reefer. Got to change his first name from Raymond to Resilient. And he's there batting particularly well. And you wonder, where is the help? And so you get some kind of a support from Blackwood rather in particular, but not enough. Second innings, the vice captain, Jermaine Blackwood, decides that he's going to pick up from the 37 he had in the first innings, and he's going to lead. He's in a leadership position, and he's going to lead. And he top scores with 79. But look at the scorecard. The man top scores with 79, but when you look at the scorecard, what do you see? Not a single West Indies batsman in the second innings gets above 20. Holder is the second highest at 18. And so the point here is, even though it's an application thing, even though maybe you're not necessarily as prepared as you should be, pitches in the Caribbean and so on, they're not structuring the innings together to move forward. And when one person gets a good knock in the first, they don't come back in the second, or you don't get a group of people trying to support each other. And there's your test match. Most sensible people, I shouldn't have used it that way, but most people who are, steep into cricket and they watched West Indies cricket, they would have told you that even though the West Indians did a fantastic job of scuttling out South Africa in their second innings for 116, they had no chance. 247 is too much to face the likes of Rabada and Norkia and those guys. It's not, we don't have the quality. And so you have to string things together. And that leads me, we have to credit the South Africans here. And my next takeaway is they got better bowlers. There's no question about that. They are better bowlers. Their bowling attack is better than ours. Rabada and Norkia in particular, 6-fers, 5-fers, hostile at times. We can't manage that kind of stuff, right? And I don't want to diminish our bowling attack. Obviously, we did a fantastic job. Roach picking up a 5-fer again, Alzarri getting a 5-fer in the first innings. So there's commendable performances here. But the South Africans are also on homegrown, home soil, so they know the conditions and they utilize it to the best of their ability. It's not like they have a great batting lineup as well. They're struggling to try to find the right mix, but their bowling seems to be better than our batting can be at this time, right? And it's hard to think through that way, but they're better. And I'm hoping that we can do something much better in the second test match. I imagine the bowlers will be better and maybe be more consistent. Hopefully they don't take as long of a time to figure out the right line and length and to immediately put pressure on the South Africans. You can't be giving away runs at this level. Thanks again, everybody, for joining me. I'm going through my main takeaways from the just concluded test match against South Africa and the West Indies. West Indies 1 down, South Africa 1 up in the series. Can we get a victory in the second test match? That would be a major step. I suppose we'll take not losing in the second test match. And then finally, as I was reflecting on what's happening here, and even some of the comments being made by players like Holder and Blackwood and some of the South African players in particular as well, is the lack of test matches. That is a problem for West Indies. We're not playing enough test match cricket, especially in a post-pandemic era. Not enough. Now, if we want test cricket to survive, and I hope you want test cricket to survive, give me a thumbs up if you think test cricket should survive. You have to play more cricket. And I understand, I recognize that cricket is a business and you have to, and to have a prolonged series, then it must be viable. So some bottom line stuff is going on here, right? People have to make these economic calculations. The sponsors have to recognize that this makes sense. People have to show up to the grounds. You got to get that support. And so it's always that chicken and an egg situation. Like, it's like a circular kind of argument sometimes we make. But I put it to you that it's nations like the West Indies, your Sri Lankas, your South Africans, I don't know why I'm pluralizing all of these things, but it's the lesser nations. It's the nations outside of England, Australia, and India that need a lot more cricket, to be honest with you. If we really want competitive cricket, it's not like we have 80 test playing nations. We only have we can count them on our hands. And it requires leadership. And this is where the ICC has no leadership because they bend to the mighty power of England, Australia, and India. But if they're not playing cricket, then there is no way these teams can get better. West Indies cannot go to South Africa and play 2 test matches. It makes no sense. So those are the nations or the cricketing establishment for the good of test cricket, because they talk about how they want test cricket to survive and it's the best form of the game. And all of that is talk if you're not willing to subsidize the playing of the cricket. At this stage, I think that's what you have to do. We need you to figure out ways to prolong this series. Because how is it that you're going to get better conditions, better quality players if they're not playing, if they're not traveling? And you're only seeing 5 test matches being played against when it's the Ashes or India and Australia or something like that. They barely want to fit you in the calendar anymore. Everybody's globe-trotting, playing T20 and all that kind of nonsense. And so, finally, I think you have to figure out a way to play more cricket if you want to be competitive. You look at some of the players in the West Indies cricket team, and they'll never get to 100 test matches. And they've been around much longer than some of the guys who are making it further. Some of the English guys or Australian guys who they're seemingly playing a lot more test cricket. So, yeah, those are my 5 takeaways. I think the early struggles on day one, particularly, I would say, before lunch and somewhat time after lunch, contributed greatly to the West Indies' demise because it allowed South Africa to amass a significant amount of runs that, even though the pitch then provided a lot of support for the fast bowlers for both teams, particularly in the final session, it was just too much. West Indies in response looked decent. But then the same thing that happened to the South Africans after tea happened to the West Indians. It was like wickets flying everywhere. It was frustrationville. I'll tell you a story. Well, I shouldn't tell you the story. I was teaching and I was like, let me check the cricket while I'm teaching. But anyway. But that's a problem. Our batting challenges are still there. Obviously, we know where we are in terms of needing a new permanent coach. I'm not quite sure when that will occur. We see the great West Indian Brian Charles Lara as batting consultant there. We saw Jimmy Adams as well. And so I don't want to come off as if this is an indictment on what's taking place, because that's not the spirit of my reflection, because some of these things are structural and you cannot figure them out overnight. But what I want to see is faster adaptation to the climate and figuring out a way to just not give your wicket away. And I will say something, and I'm going to bring this up just in case for people who may have comments or people who come on the rebroadcast and say, you didn't talk about China Paul or so. I'm not talking about him because this is a youngster that has a lot of promise. And yes, he struggled in some interesting ways, but he's learning right now. And he has a little bit of cash in the bank, if you want to put it that way, that will allow him to, we can not say anything right now. But we're hoping that in the next test match, both him and the captain can come back to some form of form and give us a launching pad. I'm hoping that Raymond Reefer will continue. Blackwood will continue. And we need something from the Silva. Holder has not been batting particularly well for some time. We could even say his bowling has dipped somewhat. But he's been fantastic for many years. And so you hope that you will refine some of this form, because we're going to need it if we're going to be competitive in the next match. Because the aim here should be to walk away with a victory. Because in a way, on paper, it seemed as if it was there. If you didn't know much, you would say to yourselves, this was gettable. You give anybody to defend a 247 runs with 2 days left in a test match. Yeah, you should be able to get that. And it's not like the pitch was that devastating. It offered something to the batters as well. It was an application issue. It was a good pitch, don't get me wrong. But yeah, so that's my take on it. What's your take? Let me know. I really appreciate people joining me on the live tonight. I'll be live again probably in a couple of days for another sport, track and field. So if you're yearning for some of that, I have that for you as well. But I want to move to, so this is my somewhat of my take on what's happening. But I want to spend a little bit of time by acknowledging some West Indies performances. I'll be honest with you, I'm, this live, and if you're from South Africa and you say, "How I'm not talking about the South Africans," I apologize. I thought Elgar did well. Markram did fantastic. Rabada, as usual, Norkia, excellent. And we can hash that out if you want. But I wanted to kind of focus on the West Indies. But I would like to talk about three individuals that did things that no matter what happens, we should always commend. And so I have, it's a little bit of superlatives. And I want to start with Alzarri Joseph. I want to recognize his first five-for in Test cricket on foreign soil. And at this stage, we must say that Alzarri Joseph must take on the mantle as the best West Indies fast bowler. He has to now consistently perform. In many ways, he's probably the best already. When you think about all formats, he can contribute at every format. And him grabbing this 5-wicket haul should, and you will hope that it will motivate him to take on even a bigger leadership role. Because the thing that the thing that I've been noticing about Alzarri is that he's a thinking cricketer. He's trying to get you out. He made some comments about trying to understand the conditions by axing, because he's not used to it. But I do hope, because I was impressed that he was able to pick that up. And let's hope that this is a sign of things to come, because he's a real future. I think about the great Antiguan fast bowlers. It's a long line of impressive bowlers that you have to fulfill or follow. Two in particular that is out of this world. Talking about Andy Roberts. Devastating. Obviously, after I watched a lot of that on film. My dad talked about him, my granddad. But YouTube. Watch Andy Roberts. Destructive. And then probably the great fast bowler of an era, Sir Curtly Ambrose. So those are the two guys I would say you might want to try to get to those levels. That could be hard. Maybe there's the Benjamin guys from Antigua, Kenny and Winston. I think Alzarri can be better than them. And so you want to look to the top. So Alzarri, hats off to your fifer, and long may it continue. Yeah. Hi, Imran. Thanks for joining me. You're saying it looks like Joseph is the only good bowler we have. Well, I mean, I wouldn't discount Kemar right now. He picked up 5 wickets. Kemar is a thinking bowler, and I'll get to Kemar in a second because I want to shout him out. And thank you for joining me. Let me know where you're joining me from. If it's the first time on the channel, I welcome you. If you've been here before, I appreciate you coming back again and stopping by. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And Roach, you have to say, is in his latter years, winding down, but he's very canny, very smart, knows how to get left-handers out in particular. So, but Joseph, I think is probably head and shoulders of the rest of them. And I don't know what to say about Shannon Gabriel. He's obviously coming back from different levels of injury, and there's need for refresh too, right? Because you can't you imagine that Roach can't continue for much longer, and the same for the likes of Gabriel. Trinidad, lovely Trinidad. I know Trinidad very well. In fact, today I spoke to because my wife is from Trinidad. Shout out to Trinidad. And I spoke to my wife's granddad today on the phone. He's 100 years old, and he still watches this cricket when I come to Trinidad, which I do every year. And he and I have been talking about cricket since I've been coming since 2007, and he's seen everything, and he's at 100, just turned 100 last November. He still watches his cricket, and we had a little chat today. I called him to talk a little bit about cricket, and he was upset because he thought that West Indies could have pulled it off, and he thought of, shout out to Mr. Cephas Duncan, but the catches, he was reminding me about the catches, and this is a guy who's 100 and he's seen it all, so seen the 3 W's, everything, so yeah, appreciate it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, all West Indies players should start playing Test cricket. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. I still think if you can cut it at Test cricket, you can cut it everywhere, right? This idea of specialists is sometimes, I don't really know. If you're a great batsman, I guess if you're really slow, attritional, maybe not. But the the great batsman can cut it in everything. Yeah. So yeah, so I wanted to shout out to Alzarri. I next want to say something about Kemar Roach, just to bring it up. And so Kemar Roach, got a fifer in the second innings, and but not only did he do that, he passed the great Joel Garner, Joel Big Bird Garner, and he got himself 260 wickets from 76 Test matches. Garner would have gotten 259 from what, 51 or 50 something. I can ask my producers to check that, but it is in the 50s or something like that. And Roach has been a stalwart for West Indies cricket for a very long time, and he's very skilled, as I mentioned, particularly at left-handers, can get them out. He's the elder statesman. He's the leader of the bowling attack. And as a new set of youngsters are going to come in, you'd hope that his leadership and his advice can help to ushering a new generation of West Indies bowlers, even if he has to step away from the team at some point. But you would think they would have looked up to Roach because for a better part of a decade or more, he's been ever present in the team outside of the time that he would have suffered some injuries. And so he's not express pace as he used to be, but he definitely is a skillful bowler. And so for Roach to pass two of the all-time greats, and in last summer he passed the great Mikey Holden, whispering death, whatever you want to call Mikey, one of the greatest fast bowlers ever. And now to pass Joel, that is definitely something that we should commend. I don't really know if you can get the next person on the list, which is Lance Gibbs. It'd be difficult to pass Lance because I don't think he can stay around that long, and we certainly don't play enough Test matches for him to get to that level. But if we're being honest with ourselves, Kemar Roach is the greatest fast bowler we've had since the retirement of Ambers and Watch. So shout out to him. Yeah, let me get to some of what you're saying here, Imran. Yeah. Australia. Speaking of Australia, it's a good Test match the other night against India. That series have been interesting. The pitches are like, don't even know what to say here. Yeah, you're making some good points. West Indies batsmen do not like to attack the spin bowlers on other teams. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of structural issues with the batting. We need better pitches, I think. I don't know what your thoughts on that, but We need to get better pitches for sure. We need to start developing a lot more batsmen and bowlers and in the region. But those things will take time. As for Joshua, I think you're saying people should say. I don't know. I mean, who would you replace him with? I think how much of a lean spell is he having? We'll have to look again. I don't know. I think he doesn't get dropped. I don't think that happens. He's certainly performing very well at the behind the stumps, but you want him to contribute better with the batting for sure. And so before I end, I want to say the Silva also record equaling 7 catches behind the stump, so that's something to commend as well. But yeah, I don't know where we are. We most likely, I think you're talking about the qualification for what for the next World Cup. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we have to see what's going to happen. We're struggling right now, and we really have to think through things. India, yeah, they'll be coming. Yeah, I mean, we'll see. We need to play more test matches as well. And I don't think we're competitive for those guys either. But until we do something, we have to play them, and we have to play them often, and we have to try to learn and do much better. I think about, and I don't know the answer to this. How much work, especially batsmen, are they doing to improve their craft on their own, right? You hear the stories of a Steve Smith or a Marnus Lavashane and other batsmen who sometimes they go through some struggles and they have their personal batting coach and they do all of these things and try to improve on different things. I don't know if we're doing that. I can't say for sure. I'm happy that Brian is there to talk about batting and how you can bat for a very long time because he certainly know how to do that. But, some of that is also on your own personal self. Ike Egan, thanks for joining us. My thoughts on Shimron Hetmeyer. I guess the question is, what thoughts do I have on what part are you talking about? Are we talking about his ability as a cricketer or his commitment to West Indies cricket? So I know we're joking, but and seriously, talent-wise, it's there. We know that at this stage he should have been dominating one-day cricket. He should have been a flair batsman in the West Indies Test lineup, probably at number 4, sometime maybe challenging for number 3 position, 4 or 5 for sure. So there's no doubt in our mind that, or in my mind, that a guy like Hetmeyer, when it comes to talent, is up there. Does he want to play cricket? Does he want to go down as a great of the game? Those are the questions he has to have and the kind of motivation he has to develop from himself. Because we've seen this long history of him failing fitness tests, not up to speed. Then there's this situation with the board and the selectors, rather, and it's still not clear to me what's happening. They said they deliberately missed the flight. When was it? Last year? Didn't want to go on tour. He's saying something else. The situation at Hetmeyer needs to be cleared up. Because I think he's running out of time. And he's wasting his talent. But some of that he has to fix himself. So I don't know. I think his talent, as we know, will not cut it at this level. talent is the bare minimum. And obviously, if you're great, if you're really talented, you can probably get away with other things. But it's not like his talent is like, he doesn't have a Brian Lara talent or a Virat Kohli or something like that. But with application, discipline, he could do something special. But I'm afraid that there's something on his side, and there's obviously something with the board that we're not quite clear about, and somebody needs to explain that to us. So that's the thing. So that's my thoughts on him. I would love to have him in the team, but he has to be ready to be in the team. So he has to play a lot of domestic cricket, regional cricket, and other cricket to worthy of a place. But we know he has the ability. It's the same like with Kemar Paul, very talented as well. Don't know what's going on, but So talent is not something that we've been lacking, I imagine. It's just the application and the transition from, like, the biggest challenge in West Indies cricket sometimes is to move from an under-19 cricketer to a seasoned cricketer. That we don't do that very well, and some of that is because we don't have the structures in place to develop, to play enough cricket, competitive, and at a level that will develop them. So I don't know. Yeah, I see. Thanks for sharing all that. I agree with all of that stuff. England is playing a lot there. These guys are playing more, and we're just not. We're not playing enough to be anywhere close to anything. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? What? I don't know. Yeah. Look, right now we got to sort ourselves out. I don't know what we're going to do with the coaching situation. I think who should be the next coach of West Indies? Do we wait and see after this tour tour of South Africa to see if we give the job permanently to what's his name, Kohli? I don't know. I mean, those are some big questions. Is it time to have coaches for every version of the game? I'm sure West Indies can't afford that, but maybe. So there's a lot of things that poses challenges to our cricket structurally and so on. But I'm hoping that we can find a way to make these small improvements. The team under Brathwaite needs to look to themselves. And because they've been fairly okay, right? But when you come up against tougher opposition, your shortcomings come up because they are more seasoned than we are, and people who are just better will beat you 9 out of 10 times. And heart alone can't help you or fight, right? So there's going to be need for that, for improvement, and then we have to work on the structural stuff, and those things will take time. Unfortunately, we don't have time, but that's where we are when we think about West Indies cricket. I hope that we can figure out a way to at least don't lose a second test match. It would be lovely if we could beat South Africa. I think we can if we apply ourselves, but it's more so on the batting side for me. And yeah, I appreciate you joining me, Imran. Take care. I'll see you next time. Maybe next time I'm in Trinidad, we can meet up. Yeah, I know that's presumptuous, but yeah, I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me, and thanks everybody for joining me tonight. I've been going over my main takeaways from the just concluded test match with South Africa and West Indies. South Africa up 1, and I discussed some of the things that I saw. I'm sure some of you might agree, or maybe you have different points there. I'll also give a little bit of a shout out to Joseph, hoping that he will take it forward as the leader of the bowling lineup now and claiming that fifer. And shout out to Kemar Roach for going past Joel Garner, for picking up another fifer, obviously, but also going past the great Joel Big Bird Garner. And yeah, second test match starts next week. Let's hope that we can go there and do something. And I really hope that we can win, because I think we're capable of doing it, especially with a South Africa team that is not that great, especially when it comes to batting. So I hope that we'll do better there. I don't know if there's any changes. Do we want to see the likes of Gudukesh Moti? You know, they said he suffered somewhat of an injury, a back injury. Excuse me. Because, you know, he was fantastic against Zimbabwe. So let's hope he gets back to form. I would certainly play him over Gabriel. Especially, I think Shannon is coming back, and he's been coming back from a lot of injuries, but I also think he's on the other side. It's probably time to start putting in some other bowlers. We have to think about the bowling lineup for the future, but I don't know. We'll see. So again, I appreciate it. Thank you everyone for joining me tonight. You know, if you're watching on a rebroadcast, you know, put your comments there. Like the video. Let me know where you're joining me from. Smash that notification bell. Subscribe, smash the notification bell. I'll be back soon again, because I'm going to talk a lot of sport. You know, hopefully I'll be there to give you a little bit of track and field this weekend as well. And who knows, some football. So thank you everybody for joining me tonight. I'm going to sign off. And if you're a West Indies fan, as usual, rally. Thank you everyone. Have a good night.